all the talk about the idea that the petrodollar could go away, and I still never understand everything that I ever thought possible. I think we've known this analogy a long time. On the stock market, stocks will go higher than you ever thought possible, lower than you ever thought imaginable. And after the pandemic, I thought I'd never see what I've seen. It's just dumbfounding to me. But I'm mesmerized by the amount of debt that we're accumulating. We've raised rates parabolically.
Right.
I had a real estate loan that was SOFR plus like 3, and now I think I'm paying like, I don't know, 9.5% or something. I was paying like maybe 3.25%. What's happening with the national debt? What happens if with the growth of it being such a large percentage of our GDP?
Well, the interest payments I talked about earlier being $1 trillion. I think what bothers me the most, Todd, is the cool, calm, collected attitude of economists. You know, listen, I'm lucky enough to bring some of the best people on Wall Street, some of the smartest people on Wall Street, but sometimes I interview them with my common sense hat on. Like, it's not unlimited, right? We just can't, as long as we can service the debt. No, because people know that, right? That's how people grew up. Like, their mom and dad never got anywhere because all they were able to do was barely pay the bills, right? We know as people that you can't strive, you cannot generate prosperity if you're barely just paying your credit card off each month, but the credit card bill doesn't go away. So why would we want a country? Why would we think our country could be prosperous if you couldn't do that in a household? And so, yeah, it's nuts. It's put the Federal Reserve in a position where they must. I don't think Jay Powell wants to destroy our economy. But right now, you should see how much money is already kind of going to be spent next year. You know, for this Inflation Reduction Act, which is the worst named thing I've ever heard. I mean, that's even worse than the Affordable Care Act. But believe me, who's ever in charge of naming these things should win some kind of award for BSing people. But it's really, really scary stuff. I don't know where to, I said earlier, I don't know where we go off the cliff. But if we don't get some sort of fiscal sanity, and the only reason we haven't not lost the perch of the world's reserve currency is that there's no true competition. It's not that we deserve to be the world's reserve currency.
But there's talk of it, right? There's talk that Russia, China, Brazil are going to get together and not use their dollars to buy petrodollars.
Right.
And that's what I'm trying to say. Like, what happens in your mind? How does it play itself out if we can't pay this debt? Or can we pay it because we keep buying it?
Well, no. Well, the Fed's not buying it. And one of the reasons why yields have gone up, right? Because they just can't keep it going. China was at 1.4 trillion. They're at 800 billion. Japan was at 1.3 trillion, but they started letting their 10-year yield go up so it's more attractive, more competitive. They're trying to get households to buy the debt, institutions buy the debt. If you go back to history, every nation that was dominant, the most dominant nation in the world at a particular time, once it lost the status of world reserve currency, never been the same. Never been the same. Of course, the most recent is Great Britain before us. They'll never be what they were. The sun sets on the British Empire, sometime within 2 hours. Right? So before it never set on the British Empire. Well, it sets on the British Empire right now. I think before that was Portugal, Austria, Spain. You go down the list. These are countries that dominated the world. They were the number one most powerful nations in the world. Once they lost the status of world reserve currency, game over. So, Brazil, Russia, India, China, they really want to make this happen. The wild card is India right now. India is playing both sides. It's the world's most populous nation. It's the biggest democracy. It's one of the youngest countries out there, and they're super duper intelligent. I just read today where there's going to be a 30% increase in Indian students in our colleges next year. They're not sure which way they want to go. They're natural rivals to China, so getting completely in bed with them is a little worrisome, but they see what's happening to America. They see what's happening to America, and they smell an opportunity. They're buying Russian oil. Who do you think China and India are buying Russian oil? They're funding the Ukraine war. We're not really talking a lot of smack to India, though, are we? They're probably the wild card near term. But at some point, you lose that status. Right now, we haven't lost it only because there's not a basket or a single currency that could replace us yet, right now.
But do you think because they're unstable in the sense that they're still basically dictatorships that ultimately most of the governments aren't comfortable with that being the reserve currency? Is that the angle that?
No, ironically, I think one of the ironies with all of that is
How could Russian ruble matter? By the way, those of you who think that this is a boring topic about a reserve currency, we have the status we have is because people need our dollars. I don't know if you guys understand this, but we literally, our guns, our bullets, our missiles are what protects the reserve petrodollar. And without the status of being a reserve currency, we have real problems. And these are real dangers that people are not paying attention to. We're worried in this country about stuff that doesn't matter, like whether Lincoln should be on the side of a building or whether we should name a school after George Washington. We have our values so messed up with what's happening in terms of what we're worried about and what we're spending money on, and Green New Deal, and we're insane. Yeah. There's an insane level of believing that the credit card is never going to run out.
Right. So to your point, yeah, I mean, Russia's not considered a democracy. China's not a democracy. But I would tell you something ironic that happened at the start of after the invasion of the Ukraine invasion. When we took Russia off the SWIFT system, which is a monetary system, so many other nations looked at that and said, you know what, if we ever piss off the United States, they're going to cut us off.
Right.
So we haven't necessarily led by example. You know, yeah, we have rule of law, but a lot of people in our own country, don't believe that we're practicing that.
By the way, you and I agree on this topic. The second we started taking Russian yachts and taking their money and taking them off SWIFT, you basically say the government's going to be retaliatory, and we're ironically we're the authoritarian.
Right.
We're taking them their ability to transfer money.
Right. And it didn't work. It backfired, but it did. A lot of nations, a lot of small nations are watching, and they're saying, you know what? We don't have oil. If we ever piss the United States off, we might be shit out of luck. They want an alternative. Countries want an alternative.